Hello there, hope you're well. I'm going to start with another story from Martin Benson. He says, "There have been moments when certain forms of the arts expressed a way of life, not just an art expression. It was a way of existence, where many people put their whole heart, soul and life into this kind of performance. One example was Mont Michel. It was a monastic fortification, a cathedral on a rock in the English Channel. The tide comes in about 40 feet and goes out, leaving 10 or 15 miles of sand. The only way to get to the rock was over a causeway, and there's not a stone in that whole country. The people from the surrounding country went religiously to pick up stones in the French Jura Mountains. They hauled 13-foot cubes by oxen, dragged them over and through swamps and rivers, and killed off everything for this cathedral. That was done as religiously, as objectively as I could possibly imagine, by groups of people. Each stone has a little mark telling what guild or what little township went off to get a stone. One stone for their cathedral. It took 1,000 years for the building. Most of the people who had something to do with it never saw it finished. That's not happening today. We have lost that kind of thing, because we have another medium of exchange, and it's crippling us a great deal instead of helping us develop objectively towards something. Now we have this exchange of money, an exchange of money instead of human development." Someone in the other group asked me about freedom. It's a very difficult question until you understand the situation. These people were free. They were free deeply inside in order to do something greater than they were. You're never free of anything, only free to do something else. I didn't mean to talk about that, but this came into it. You should learn some of the difference between what is valuable and what is non-valuable. Do not waste your time on this, that, and the other thing. If you do something as objectively as possible, with your whole being, then everything, as they always say about Christianity, shall be added unto you. The work, our work, is so vast that there are many facets to it. It's on a vast scale. Well, very beautiful words from Martin Benson. Until about 10 years ago, Mont Saint-Michel looked the same as it did in ancient days. But the world is declining, and the people with it. From my position, I have read so many Gurdjieff, Ouspensky, Fourth Way books, but none of them have added anything to the original material. Can you see that? There are a few books they talk like this, they talk like Jean de Salzman. She says there is an energy, there is a presence, I am right here. That's some sort of experiential book. There are a few books like that, but they don't mean much. Because, as Gurdjieff says, knowledge and being have to travel together. Knowledge meaning technical knowledge. And there is no technical knowledge in that kind of book. Yes, she feels something. Well, it's very nice. But you can't get anywhere from that. All of the Gurdjieff groups that I'm aware of, they do the same thing. They sit quietly in a room and they say, this is an energy, this is a presence. It's kind of strange. But they no longer talk about the technical material, about knowledge. They do not discuss that. And without the technical knowledge, which is something that is stable outside of our own existence, it's like a ladder, in the same way as you have a map and it helps you to climb a mountain. Once the map is drawn, other people can climb the mountain. They have the experience of climbing the mountain, the feeling of climbing a mountain. But somebody has to draw a map, and people no longer draw maps. In fact, nobody has extended that map. since Ouspensky and Gurdjieff died, nobody has extended it. That says quite a lot. And why is that? Well, there are problems with the teaching and in the teaching and around the teaching and how it was done, and nobody escapes blame. But it was a tremendous effort, and you can not really criticize Ouspensky or Gurdjieff because they have brought a wealth of effort and technical knowledge. It's just that nobody's picked it up. That's all. Nobody has picked it up. I don't blame them. There are errors in the teaching. I try to explain on this channel how I see those errors and what needs to be done differently. But in the same way, people don't talk about that in the groups that exist. Nobody's picked it up. Nobody seems interested, so I don't know what to say, really. One thing I was thinking this morning is that the division between essence and personality is often assumed to be the difference between the real I and the false I. Essence is real, personality is false. Isn't that what people assume? But these are two different ways of categorizing things. False and real is one thing, and essence and personality is more about their function. An inward function and an outward function. They're two different categorizations, not necessarily corresponding together. In fact, if we think about Gurdjieff's cosmology, he would say that, this is part of a natural system. We are like trees. The personality is the outer sheath, and there is a reciprocal maintenance. So what is the reciprocal maintenance between the personality and the essence? How do they work together? Oh, here's another question. These are important questions that they have not been asked. They have not been asked and they have not been answered. The biggest problem in the teaching is that there is no recognition of the meaning of what is called the false self and the many eyes. There is a sort of subtle hatred of them, as if they are meaningless and just get in our way. It is the same thing as the hatred of the ego that you see in the East. It's like nobody quite can take them seriously. They are false, therefore they are false, they must be removed, they're evil, they're wrong, they're denied, they don't exist. This mentality has been going on for thousands of years. It's a wrong mentality. The correct answer, I'll just tell you what the correct answer is that these are partial formations in the third story, because it's not possible for the being to jump from the identity of the second story, which is in the solar plexus, to the identity of the third story. It cannot make that jump. It needs to find some way of stepping slowly upwards, and that way is what we call the many eyes. It is like an accretion disk. The problem is that the identity starts to flow into the many eyes, and that is what's called identification. If you disidentify from it, then you presumably return to the second story, which is fine. However, the many eyes do not dissolve easily because they have some sense of identity and they need to be convinced to dissolve. The work of dissolving the many eyes is of extreme importance, and it is very difficult and requires a high level of skill. In China in particular, they have many dissolving methods. They word it many ways, like flowing down or dissolving down or reversing the polarity. They have many different ways of describing it, alchemy. All these things refer to the same thing. It is the dissolution of the temporary structure of the accretion disk of the many eyes down into the second story so that the being can grow from the second story. And then the cycle is complete, because the tree is growing upwards, it is gathering material, and then that material is returned to the core, and then the being can grow upwards. This is at the level of being an identity. Now, Gurdjieff also had this other idea about, one of his primary ideas is about the flow of cosmic material through the food factory. But that does not speak to the identity. That is simply the fuel that is running through the structure, not how the identity is formed. It's always good to listen to Martin Benson talk about the real world and real life. But Ouspensky, I think, realized that something had to change in man. And Gurdjieff was studying what it was that had to change. But he did not seem to reach a conclusion. Gurdjieff indicated that, especially after his wife had died, or whilst his wife was sick, he was gathering new information. In any case, the fact is that, as Gurdjieff says, after the fifth in the octave, because the vertical dimension is open, there is a vast amount of work to be done, and that is one reason for the chaos of human life, because a certain awakeness happens, and then you can see all the debris of the past, less conscious life, the debris of the previous realm of life. I recognize that inside is darkness, is negativity, is pain and suffering. And if you stand back and look at the violence and chaos inside people today, what does it mean? It means they're suffering. Like Buddha said, we are suffering, and we're suffering because we have woken up. And not recently, but thousands of years ago, we've woken up from the animal realm, and we can feel our suffering, which is simply the nature of that realm. We're trying to move to another realm where things are lighter and different, but having opened our eyes at that threshold, we're confronted by real darkness. And strange thing about people is that they all know they suffer, they've got habits and negativity and things that they don't like, and they cannot change them. They try, everybody tries to be positive, to stop doing the bad things, stop sulking, stop drinking, stop fantasizing, everybody tries. But they're lacking a certain knowledge of how to do that. Normally they simply try to ignore it or step away from it, but it comes back tomorrow. And really the healing of all the pain and wounds and negativity is our sacred task. And upon this rock I build my church, because that's where my money is. I have come to the conclusion that a great deal of spirituality is about creating a future, reaching higher places, but it doesn't work because everybody is chained to their pain. And that has to be dealt with. There has to be an exchange of the darkness for the light. It's not just light. That would be too easy, We have to weave between two levels. And it's very glorious to talk about spiritual things. And I've talked about the glorious cosmology of Gurdjieff. But ultimately the path is a man sitting quietly in a room and feeling his wounds and learning about himself. That is what it is. That is what it is. That's infrequently presented these days. Although all the teachers that I studied, you could feel their wounds and their learning inside. I was born in God's hands and I will die in God's hands. Just like everybody in my family. What else can we do? We have to try and understand what we are, where we are, what we are a part of. An ancient Taoist proverb is, easy is right. Begin right and you are easy. Continue easy and you are right. The right way to go easy is to forget the right way, and forget that the going is easy.